in the uh, in the before centuries, if we see, they were normal ships, and after the advent of technology, they were fast sailing ships that has made a easy way for doing their ports and command and coordination so much easily between their home country within the host country here. So as you see, there was a geographical expansion of European colonial idea about this fast sailing ships. This fast sailing ships is one of the main factor of causing the colonialism, guys. Okay, so the word colonialism is nothing but the process of the European settlement. Okay, it was only the Europeans. They started navigating, they started discovering, they started knowing many things in that period of age. Okay, so where it is a process of these European settlements and also how they are managing the political environment towards the rest of the world here. So here also they are, here one thing you have to keep it in mind that they are creating a relation with the another countries which are compromising what Asia, Africa, America, and the Australia here. Okay. So this colonialism is also not that much specific to the specific region or space or time, but it has a lot of influence over the human spheres of life as well. Okay. So if we see, yeah. So this was most significant, if you see, with the position of England. One such example was India, that has exploited India for nearly 200 years from 1757 to 1747. We can observe that. So going with the meaning, nature, and definition of the colonialism, here we can say that this colonialism referred as a domination. It's nothing but a domination, guys. So how that big country is trying to dominate the another part of country which is unable to sustain here. Okay, so part of one territory people over the other, and also that is affecting the lives of the people, which are including what, which are including the social, economic, and the political things here. So in this also they were having what, the sovereignty, which means the supremacy of what, the colonizing power, which means they are making that another country as a part of their sovereignty here. So if you see this, the word colony has been originated from the Latin word which is called as colonia and the colonus, which means what, a place for the agriculture and a farmer. Okay. So here if you see the roots of this word stressed in the colonialism, what it is concerned, it is only concerned with the shifting, how people are shifting from one country to the another. In those days, we can see the slavery. Okay, slavery was also a part of colonialism because they were in need of the laborers here. So, how they were a shifting of people of this colonial power to the freshly occupied territories. So, those people were coming and occupying the territories of the another country as well, and where they have become this settlers in our India also. There are many of the um, other Britishers who are settled down here. So, like such, if we see, there is a definition given by Roger Tignor. What he says that this essence of colonialism is the existence of the colonies. Okay, the colonies that were existing here. So that means that were ruled here. Those colonies were ruled from where? From the different territories. So different territories were like a protectorates or the informal spheres of influence here. That is what Roger Tignor is telling us. So, if we go and check with the origin and development of the colonialism, if we go back to the history, it has a very long history, beginning from where? From the Egyptians, from the Phoenicians, Greeks, and the Romans here. So, all these people, what did they do? They have built their strength and domination over the other countries here. Okay, so then there is a Phoenicia. That was a maritime merchandise culture. Maritime is nothing but a sea related culture here that has spread across the Mediterranean, from which year? From the 1550 BC to the 300 BC. Okay. So afterwards, we see the Greeks and the Persians. What did they do? They went and acquiring. They were in possession of that. I want to get that land here around the recognized places of the whatever they were traveling at that period of time. So later also the same thing Romans has also followed for establishing the rule, rule over the those territories that they were occupied. They wanted to rule over those colonies along where along the Mediterranean Northern Africa and the Western Asia here. So after that, you see, beginning of the 17th century, these Arabs, who are Arabs, right? So they also have conquered many of the important parts of the Middle East, Northern Africa, and the parts of Asia and Europe. That is what we see, a little culture of those Arabians in these countries. So this is how it has been spread. It has been originated somewhere in the between, as they have been um, as these Arabs have conquered some of those parts, we see their culture in those parts as well. Okay. So after the 19th century, majorly, if we see, they were like Venetians, Genoese, and the Almeficians. So these are had a what a domination to establish colonies in a very wealthy way. Okay. So historians call this period, which the 7th century period, as what? As a Mediterranean colonialization. Okay. So after that, if we see, there was the Prince Harry. Okay. So that Prince Harry, who was a Portuguese navigator, what he did do, he started exploring and he was discovering the sea routes here. And with the modern colonization, only has started from him here. So there was Spain, Portuguese, French, British, Danish, Swedish, American, Russian, German, Argentinian, Japan. They all these people has built their empires at all around the globe. From which centuries to which centuries, bole to from the 15th to the 20th century. So you see, there was a in this era only after the Second World War, there was no more colonization that we can see, but as in a form of imperialism as well. But in the present form, if we see, there is a capitalism. Okay, that's the secondary case. So with these rise and fall of this colonial empires can be studied into three stages, guys. How many stages? Three stages. But these three stages were the result of this five things. So what are these five things? Because of the advancement of this capitalism, since people started discovering their new sea routes, they started trading this capitalism. Now what is capitalism here? They wanted to make up the profit here, profit with expanding their businesses to the other countries. So this capitalism has become what? A global political system here. So then there are radical changes. Radical means very much courageous changes, very much radically. So that has witnessed by what? As a world as metropolis. Okay, metropolis is nothing like a satellite. Okay, in where you see the social, economic, and the political spheres here. Okay, metropolis are nothing but the big cities you can call. So there is a rise of middle class in the world economy. So, and there was also the advancements that has taken place in the science and technology, and there are historical developments and the leaders who are influential from their colonies, and they were participant in the what? In the freedom struggles. They have decided to end up the colonial empires here. So these were the results of those three stages. So we're gonna see what are those three stages. Okay. So the first stage is called as the monopoly of the trade. Okay. So monopoly of the trade, for example, you see, India was a main primary objective of this monopoly of the trade. Monopoly is nothing but a single producer or a single businessman here. Mono means one. Okay. So that was the Indian resources that has stabbed what our India is rich with the many of the resources, right? That has been cheaply um, taken by us, and that has been sold very high rates in their own country. So there was a the Indian resources that were tapped cheaply by the East India Company. For what? For getting these bounties from their colonies here. So after the establishment of their political power in India, the large revenue surplus was transferred from their colonies here. So now they have built up their what's it, the business in the colony here. For say the for you can take an example of India. As India, they have established their empire here, the East India Company. People came up for the trade first, but then what did they do? They have established their political sovereignty here. Okay. So after that, they were getting the large revenue surplus. Surplus is like much amount because they were giving us the cheaper amounts, but whereas they were selling in the higher amounts here. So you see, there was what it has happened as they were transferred from these colonies in different forms, like they were paying high amounts of salaries to the European bureaucrats and also waging wars with the expensive colonies. This is where what Dadabhai Naoroji calls as the drain of wealth. Wealth was draining off, wealth was going here. So according to his estimation, it was nearly 2 to 3% of India's national income has been got up by the Great Britain here. So this is the first stage of colonialism where there were no much of substantial changes that has been witnessed here. But if you see, um, the ideology was not a part of the development, and there was no criticism of understanding how they were conventional values, which means with the negotiating, or which means with the meeting up here, and also with the religion and the customs, etc. If you see here, so then there is second stage. Second stage is called as a free stage. Okay, free trade stage. Second stage is called as a free trade stage here. So there was a commercial bourgeoisie. Now, who is bourgeoisie? You all know, the one who is owning the modes of production, or the capital investors. What did they do? They have changed this their trade and commerce organizations with their large investments. And what did they do? They have opposed the exploitation, as because of the appropriation of the surplus of the lower class. Because what did they believe that it might destroy the goose. The goose, why that goose is laying down the golden eggs. Now, for whom the goose is, we know the goose and the golden egg story. So the in the story where we can see the goose was killed by a boy in the um, in the greed of getting that golden egg so that he could become the rich here. So whereas for us, these colonies, for those Europeans or those the Britishers, for those these colonies were like a goose here. Okay, so the commercial activities of this bourgeoisie, if we see, has focused on the market. Okay, market access. And also in this stage, if we see the capitalist merchandising relations, merchandising, the trade that they go with the other that were being implemented. And more modern education was also provided in this stage, and for whom that has become the social capital to a new administration. And it was also made that the assumption that westernization, what is westernization? Because of the modern things that they were introducing us, we were following that. So that has where we were trying to buy the foreign goods as well. So that has this westernization has raised the demand for the foreign goods as well. And where they you can see the liberal imperialism was encouraged in the political field in this stage here. So the third stage talks about the 19th century. Okay, in the 19th century, this third stage has been begun, which has attributed for the global capitalist economy and the supremacy of England in the world politics. That has rapidly spread, where the industrialization, and there was a very deep struggle, constant struggle, intense struggle for the markets and raw materials, where these people has to sell their goods. Okay, so there were also and lot of excess means nothing but more accumulation, which means acquiring of the capital that has proved what? That has proved the profitable opportunities for investment here. Okay. So next feature of this third stage you had that the empire and its glory has helped those colonial masters to reflect what the political dissent at home within their home country, and with the commonality of the interest we can see. So this colonialism in this stage has additionally had a very intense, very deep control over the colony we can see, because there was a modernization and there was a Western education that were the main things we can see in this stage here. Okay, so the third stage generally did not begin in many of the regions of the colonies, but if we say one of the major reason was the colony has been destroyed by the economists of those colonies which were not observing the capital investment here. Okay, in several colonies, what happened? There was a older sort of exploitation that has been continued, and where you can see those things in the first two stages that has been existed in India here. Whereas the third stage, it never has happened. Okay, so these are the origin and the development of the colonialism. So next we go with the causes and the common characteristics of colonialism. So we all know there was lot of political conflicts among the Europe in the 18th and the 19th centuries, which has also crossed its boundaries, where it has been spread across all the parts of the globe, right? So, um, with this, there were a lot of the number of countries in Europe. They were having a number of colonies outside the Europe here. They have established number of colonies here. So, for what reasons? We can see there were number of reasons for getting their colonies here. One was the discovery of new sea route. As they have been discovered the new sea route, they were voyagers. They were encouraged to what? Those voyagers. Voyagers are nothing but the one who goes on the voyage, which means on a sea route discovery, or they go and they travel with the ship here. So they were encouraged to find new lands, new sea routes, especially to the Asian countries. So in this process, what happened? America was discovered by the Columbus, and where that was led to the establishment of colonies in the America by the Spain and the Portuguese people. And also we see there is a discovery of sea route by Portuguese man who is called the famous man Vasco da Gama. So he was a Portuguese. He has set up the Portuguese colony in the India here. So next there is an economic consideration. As there was a need of raw materials, there was a need of raw materials and minerals and other natural resources that has to be get up from those colonies were used for what? For their betterment, for these European lands, for this host countries' land betterment, they were getting those raw materials from their um, colonies. And then there is industrial revolution that has begun in Europe in the 1750 AD. In that we can see engines, machines, factories that have not been existed before the industrial revolution. It was only the advancement in the science and technology that has led to the industrial revolution. And you can see that this industrial revolution, because people were, this capitalists were putting up the new industries. They were establishing industries, and which, as they want to expand their business not only in their country but also in the new countries, this has led to the colonialism here, and they have colonialized the Asia and Africa. Okay. So one industrial revolution ka major invention was the steam engine and the spinning jenny, right? So next is the imperial tendency. So most of the European countries in the 17th and the 18th centuries, they had lot of surplus population, which means an extra population. That population, when there is an extra population, that needs more space. Okay. So when it needs more space, this extra population was provided by whom? By the colonies here. So the social factor is also the important factor for the contribution of this colonization, we can say. So that's what this surplus export of surplus population, we can say, that has led to the establishment of settlers colonies in the South Africa, Tunisia, Algeria, Angola, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe. All these extra people have settled there. Okay. And there is surplus investment, so they were gaining more and more and more. What will they do with that more and more? So they have invested in the Europe, and the hands of the Europe, because you see they were trading that carried on with the Afro-Asian countries, and where all the capitalists, they wanted to invest their surplus capital outside their mainland, we can say. So next was the to educate the backward countries. As there were people like Rudyard Kipling and others, what did they believe? That this colonialism was not only taking up the territories or grabbing the territories or acquiring power, but it was a kind of, it was also a form of humanitarianism that was helping less fortunate people around the world here. People were not such fortunate. They were not there. So what did they believe? That the Westerners have to spread and educate their modernity across the globe, especially in the Asia and Africa, and also with the some parts of backward European countries here. So next is the colonies are treated as a pride of the country here, because they were capturing and they were having their political sovereignty, and these Europeans, they felt that this is a symbol of strength, because they got the strength in the other countries, see, and the richness. So this has resulted what? One of them want to get or possess the better, what better they can do. So the pride was championed, where we can see in the countries like England, Portugal, France, and Germany. All this has led to the growth of colonialism. So next is the unstable political conditions of the colonies. So there was no political unity in many parts of the Asia, because they were in confusion what was going to happen, because they were under the Britishers. They were under the Europeans or the Portuguese or the people who have been made them as the colonies because of the colonial powers. They did not have lot of political unity, and many of the European countries, they were successfully established their colonies, and therefore they had got a great chance to advance them. Okay. So next we are having the colonialism and the imperialism. So this is nothing but the colony may be a part of the empire, and then this colonialism is associated with the imperialism. Okay, so there this colonialism and imperialism are interchangeably used here. Okay. On the other hand, if we differentiate the imperialism, that has been charged by only the empires. Okay. So colonialism in different countries, if we see, there was an establishment of Asian colonies during the 18th and the 19th centuries. Main them were the France, England, Netherlands, and the Portuguese here. So next we see the India, as there was a sea route that has been discovered by Vasco da Gama in 1498 to the India sea route, that has made lot of Europeans to give a foundation to establish their colonies here. So what did they do? Many Indians were Portuguese. Their colonies were established in Goa, Diu, Daman. And that's what, if we go to Goa, if we visit Goa, there is a little touch of Portuguese culture you can see. And there also people will speak the Portuguese and the French here. And then there was a Southeast Asia establishment. Portugal was the first European country that has established its colonies in the Southeast Asia. And there is a Malacca. This Malacca was the first colony in this region of Southeast Asia. Okay. And where, with the advent of the Dutch here, that has defeated the Portuguese in 1640, that has led to the again the colonies, establishment of Dutch colonies in the Southeast Asia here. Okay. So there were many things that has been happened in the Southeast Asia, as Burma occupied by English and Hong Kong from China, Sigan occupied from by the France, and Manchuria came under the Russian Empire, and where Kaicho was occupied by the Germans, and Korea, Formosa was occupied by the Japan here. Then there is Central Asia, where we can see the English and the Russian colonies were established in the central part of Asia. In the central part, you can see the Tashkent, Bokhara, Samarkand. These were captured by the Russian empires. And another is the establishment of colonies in the Africa. So we say the geography of North Africa is very much well known among the Europeans since the time of Greece and Rome here. So, and there is a explore. There were people who are exploring. They were getting to know about the sub-Saharan African that has been began from the 15th century, and that exploration was led by whom? By the Henry, who was a Portuguese prince, who was a navigator here. So during the 16th and 17th century, we see there was a European exploration of Africa here. And also, there were Arab slave traders whose exploration with the interior of Africa and the European knowledge towards the geography was the interior of the sub-Saharan Africa region that has been begun in the 19th century, you can see. So next is the Togoland and the Cameroon, how the African country was explored by the David Livingstone. He was the European that has been realized how very good wealth is there in the Africa here. Okay, next there is Algeria, Tunis, and Madagascar. This again comes under the Africa. They were the French who has established their colonies in the Africa here. So 1100 people were sent from Lorraine and Alsace to live permanently settled down here. Okay, and then there is Angola, Mozambique, Tripoli, Abyssinia. Okay, so this the wealth, whatever that was there in the Africa and the French achievements that has attracted other European powers. Now, who are those other people? Italy, Spain, and Portugal. So they were influenced by this and they have established their colonies here. So next there is a East, West, North, South Africa. So this was came under the influence of England and it has become its colony here. England also occupied the Gold Coast in the 1885 under this, and in the Boer War, okay, victory that has got the Transvaal and the Orange Free State for the England here. Okay. Next was the end of colonialism. As you see, there was lot of there was a First World War which we will see in the next unit. So this First World War has got the political alertness. People were alert here in the political sphere that has grew substantially, and people of colonies they were aware of their rights. they has because of the education that they was got, because of the liberalism and the rights, the unity, this all ideologies they got to know. They have built up their awareness with their rights and with their freedom of press. Because of the free press, they got to know about that they were being exploited, right? And also the services that was been rendered by the Christian missionaries as also made people of those colonies aware of their rights here. At the same time, this there was a capitalism failure which has um, given a way for the uh, inability guys, okay, for the fulfillment of the aspiration of the people here. So after Second World War, we see many of the colonies they have got the freedom, including our India, and that has led to the end of colonialism in the history of mankind. So now we do not see any of the colonies or any of the country is hosting the another country here. Okay, so there is a impact of colonialism. So there is a positive impact and there is a negative impact. In the positive impact, if we see the firstly, it was enriching the colonies because they were getting to know the wealth was collected. They were also getting a little kind of revenue. So the secondly, if we see this colonialism has given a big boost to the industrial revolution because the raw materials and the minerals that were enabled the factories as factories were setting up here and their production there was no interruption here. Okay, and the thirdly, the positive impact which it has created that the that has colonies has provided what a safe haven for the extra people in the colonial countries here. So they were settling down or they were shifting to the other countries. They were transported to the colonies as a settlers, you can say. And this was the main issue. They can tackle the poverty and unemployment, right? The fourthly, um, was they were able administrated and seasoned military generals who were from the distance, from the far away, they were ruling the colonies here. Okay, so by this they got benefited from the administrative people, and also the experience of these leaders has made deputed in the mainland here. So with if we go with the negative impact, likewise there are other few positive impacts we can see, and there are few negative impacts. The negative impact was they have exploited a lot of resources of the colonies because they were in need of it. Okay, that is what people had to suffer from the famines, droughts, diseases, and the impoverishment. Okay, so the secondly, if we see, there was a continuous wars that were done because to maintain their sovereignty, their supremeness here over the native princes here. Okay, because how, why will the prince will give their territory to somebody out? Nobody will give. They will fight here. So there were a continuous of the fights. We can see. Thirdly, it has encouraged slavery among those colonies. One such is like Africans were made slaves, and even few of the Indians were also made the slaves here. Fourthly, it has built walls and segregated the people as ruled and the rule here, rulers and the rule. So this is how we see. Finally, what did they do in India also? The Britishers, for example, they have followed the divide and rule policy. They got to know the weakness in the India and they have triggered the people with the divide and rule in their colonies. And where we see Britishers were dividing Indian society into the Hindus and the Muslims, which has resulted in the bifurcation of the subcontinent of India and the Pakistan here. Okay, so this is what our colonialism is that has a very great, huge influence on the social, economic, and political spheres of the colonies. And where the second half of the previous century, that where we can see there was a decline and collapse of the system. Which system? The colonialism system, and there was a decline of colonization, which is called as decolonization. Okay. So our next unit is First World War and the Second World War. So we will see under this what were the causes of the First World War, the significance of First World War and the Second World War as well. So if we say this First World War has lasted about 1565 days, guys, which means the 4 years and the 3 months. Okay, which means 4 years and the 3 months, where in this it was the very bloodiest and the costliest war you can see in the history of mankind. Bloodiest. Bloodiest is nothing but the where you can see a lot of bloodshed everywhere here. Okay. And in the First World War, it was a war that has been dominated by the military technology, which has made the defense system grow stronger even than the before here. So there were three-dimensional wars fought on land, above land, sea, and under the sea. Okay. So we see what are the causes of First World War. So the first cause of First World War was the formation of secret alliances and the counter alliances. Counter is nothing but the opposite to that alliance. So by 1907, that great European powers, they have grouped themselves into two blocks. One is the Triple Alliance and another is the Triple Entente. Okay, Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. Triple Alliance and Triple Entente. Entente. Okay, in this. Okay, so in that you see it consisted of Germany. The triple entente consisted of the Germany, Australia, this one. Okay, this consisted of the Australia, Germany, Hungary, Italy, and Turkey. While this was composed of the France, UK, and Russia. Okay, France, UK, and the Russia we can see. Okay, so in this, you can see the first step towards the formation of the Triple Alliance was taken by the Germany. This Germany has entered into alliance. Alliance means grouping or being shaking hands with the another country. Alliance with the Austria. So Hungary, Austria with Austria, Hungary in 1879. So in 1882, Italy has joined this alliance, which is called as Triple Alliance. So, however, you see the loyalty of Italy's alliance was very much uncertain because it was what was main here to gain the territories in Europe from the Austria, Hungary, and winning what certain colonies from the certain African colonies with who support with the French support here. In response to this, what happened? There was a Germany's triple alliance emerged into triple entente. So here in the triple entente, it has got its foundation in the Franco-Russian entente of 18 of 1870 sorry 1893 guys. 1893 here it was formed in order to contain what a growing power here. So in 1907 UK has signed the Anglo-Russian Convention with the Russia, where that has called as known as triple entente. So the significant here is they were forming the two alliances where they wanted to prevent the war here. So, but there were mutual hatred between them that has become an outbreak of the war here. Okay. So next there is the militarianism and the racism for the armaments. So within the militarianism and the mad race armaments. You want to get those weapons here, the arms and ammunition between the powers has caused by the World War One. People were in getting this arms. We know arms are nothing but the weapons here. That has started the Franco Franco-Prussian War. Okay, Franco-Prussian War of 1871. Because people were back of the arms here, and that has resulted what that has resulted within the military and the naval powers of all the European nations. And for example, if we see Germany and Italy, they what did they do? They have expanded their naval power. Naval is nothing but the navy. Okay, in the competition with the Britain and the France here. So there were high explosive bombs, high velocity rifles, filled guns, and many other destructive weapons were discovered at this period of time. So further poison gases and such other chemical preparations here has become so much common because they were back of the armaments, which means the arms and weapons. Okay. Okay. So these armaments and inventions were alleged to be the defense and the interest of the people. Next was the aggressive nationalism. So another cause of war was the nationalism, love for their country, and the competitive patriotism. So the French Revolution and the Napoleon Wars has also contributed a lot with the growth of nationalism that has resulted in the unification of Italy and the Germany, and the love for Germany that has demanded what? Hatred towards the hatred of France. And whereas France hatred towards the Germany, that was a vice versa. It was a very intense nationalism in Serbia, which has created a bitterness, which has created a opposition between the Serbia and the Austria-Hungary here. So that's what there was in this period only there was a murder of Archduke Francis Ferdinand that has been happened, that has response that Serbia and that bitterness among the Serbia and the Austria-Hungary has caused for the murder of Archduke Francis Ferdinand in 1914. So next there was the economic rivalry and the imperialism. The industrial revolution that has taken place in the Europe that has made lot of Europe to advance in many of the years, and there was a scientific, industrial, and economic developmental Europe that could establish its imperialism over other parts of the world as well. And we see there was a large scale of production in the European nations that was growing demand for what? For the colonial markets and the raw materials. So this was a very regular for the colonies. They wanted to expand their markets to get that raw materials that could be needed for their industries. So fifth was the French Fifth was the French desire to recover Alsace and the Lorraine here. So the government, another cause was the desire of the people of whom the France to get back their Alsace and the Lorraine, which has been snatched away from whom Germany has taken that Alsace and the Lorraine in the year 1871. So you see, France felt that Germany industrial property was mainly due to these areas because they have captured this Alice and the Lorraine here. Next was the German responsibility. So the Germany's intense desire to build what a world empire has contributed to the outbreak of First World War as well. So Bismarck, as long as uh, Bismarck was there in the affairs here, Germany was a whole satiated power. So after the fall of Bismarck in 1890, the Germany's ambition for the world dominance has begun to grow here. So there was a rapid expanding of population of 56 million in the heart of Europe, you can see. After that, there were Near Eastern or the Balkan problem. Okay. The Near Eastern and the Balkan problems as well, where the after the fall of Turkish Empire, number of small countries has been emerged into the Balkan Peninsula. So three of these countries, who are those three countries? Bulgaria, Greece, and Serbia. They began to clash with each other for the control of the Macedonia, which had what? Which had the mixed population. They were having the Bulgarian people, Greece people, and the Serbia people here. Next was the lack of machinery to regulate the international relations here. As another cause of war was the lack of machinery. There were no proper machinery, or there was a less of machinery that has been involved here. So this has resulted to a type of anarchy in the international relations. And next was the immediate cause as soon as the First World War has started, as the immediate cause was the main cause was the murder of Archduke Ferdinand, who was the apparent to the Austrian throne by a Serbian who has murdered him on June 20th, 1914. So this Australian government has held responsible Serbia for the crime, and that has sent an ultimatum to the Serbia, teaching it a lesson here, where this was a very immediate cause of the First World War, you can see. And Austria was backed up by the Germany in this place. Eventually, there was a power of Triple Alliance that has faced the powers of Triple Entente. Okay. In this, if we see the course of First World War, um, the First World War was started with an attack on Serbia by the Austria-Hungary, and after that, France, Britain, and Russia were one-sided, which were called as the Allied powers. Austria, Germany, and Turkey was on the other side, which was called as the Central Powers. Allied powers, Central powers. So in 1915, Italy has joined one of the side of Allies. because it thought that it could recover from some sort of her former provinces from the Austria. So in the initial stages of the Central Powers, heavy losses on the Allies, you can see, and they were a revenge against the Central Powers, we can see. Okay, so the year 1917 was marked by two important events. One is the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. Next is the entry of United States into the war on the side of the Allies here. Okay, okay. Sorry. First was the Bolshevik Revolution. Next was the USA has also made Germany as a threat to the world peace here. Okay. So this USA from a long time has followed a policy of isolation. It wanted to be isolated here. So where as um, in this process, the Germany has left alone in the war. In the meantime, there was a mutiny in Germany and the emperor. So the rulers they have sought peace on the Wilson's 14 points and they signed the Armistice on November 18, 1918. This has ended the Great War because it has been started from a long period. It has been because many of the countries were involved here. That is what it is called as a Great War. The significance of Great War, if we see, the principle there was a principle of nationalism, right? Another was a spread of democracy. Next was the extension of republic form of government, we can say. Next was the United States who has occupied a position here in 1914. Next was the, as a result of this war, the spirit of internationalism and international cooperation has been increased. And because of President Wilson's 14 points and the influence of world politics, here we can say. Likewise, there are few of the significance and where this First World War has gave a temporary impetus to the movement here, but its progress was not that much encouraging. So the Second World War. This Second World War has started from September 1939 and that was very much different from the previous wars that we see. The causes of the Second World War was as in the First World War we see the Archduke Ferdinand of Sarajevo was murdered here and he was considered as the immediate cause of the outbreak of the First World War and the invasion of Poland by the Germany. Okay, Germany now it wanted to occupy the Poland here has got a considered immediate outbreak in the Second World War. First one was the humiliating terms of Treaty of Versailles. So the Treaty of Versailles, through this treaty, Germany was only deprived, not only deprived of her colonies, territories, and natural resources, but it was burdened. It was given a lot of burden, which was it was against its capacity to pay here. Because in the First World War, if we see, it was Germany who has started, and in the second, it was been burdened here. And next was the this has meant it has given a short-sighted and selfish nature of victorious powers we can see because it's where the Germany has been burdened here. Next was the imperialistic policies of Germany, Italy, and Japan has also contributed for the outbreak of Second World War. And if we see the leadership of the Hitler under the Germany in the Germany has been very much extremely imperialistic. Okay, and the Mussolini who is from Italy, he was aiming to past glory what the Roman Empire that was invaded and occupied by the Abyssinia. So in the far east, if we see there is again Japan who wanted to establish her hegemony, which means the power in the Asia by driving out, by wiping out all those, by removing all those Western powers from there. So the next was the establishment of dictatorships in Europe. So with the Paris Peace Conference of 1919, it not only humiliated the defeat of Germany, but also there was a lot of disappointment done here that has resulted for the emergence of fascist dictatorship. In this, under this fascist, if we see, there was a leadership of Mussolini in the Italy, and there was Nazi dictatorship under the Adolf Hitler here. So in the year 1937, what happened? Italy has joined the Anti-Comintern Pact. Okay, which pact? Anti-Comintern Pact here. So next there is a formation of two rival armed camps here. So the rise of Nazi Germany and the fascist Italy has paved way for the armed camps. These two countries were having lot of weapons and the arms and ammunitions. Okay. Then there is a ideological conflict. So as we have seen, there was a armed camps. There was a ideology here between the dictatorships one hand and the democracies on the another hand here. Okay. So there was a struggle between the two worlds who can permit no compromise here. Next was the failure of disarmament and the rise of militarianism. Yeah. And that you can see that was a failure of disarmament efforts, and the articles of league convent has made the member nations to take steps for the reduction of the the arms to the lowest points here with the national safety. Next was the inefficiency of the League of Nations. So the League of Nations were established for what? To save the international scene from the scene of war here. But due to its weakness, it has failed here. Then there was a discontent of various minority races. There was a dissatisfaction of the national minorities that has been created by the Treaty of Versailles. Okay. So then there is a policy of appeasement. So with the policy of appeasement that was been adopted by the that has been adopted by the UK and the France towards the dictators, that has contributed to the outbreak of Second World War. Okay. So then what is the immediate cause in the Second World War was the Hitler has attacked on Poland. So the Paris Peace Conference has made this Poland a independent state here. So in order to get her sea coast, which is called as a Polish corridor. So Germany has what? Germany has, this is the Poland, this is the Germany. It wanted to establish a Polish corridor. Okay, Polish corridor. The sea. So within 15 days, I mean, sorry, yeah, after what happened, the Germany was torn into two parts. Hitler came into power. He demanded the annexation of Danzig to Germany, and he also demanded the closure of Polish corridor, where Poland has refused to accept the demands of Hitler, and that has strengthened the French support with the demands of Hitler on the strength. It had a French support, guys. Poland has a French support. On the refusal, what happened? As Poland has not listened to the Hitler, so Hitler has attacked Poland on the 1st September 1939 without any declaration of war here. So they have declared after Polish invasion by the Hitler, they have declared a war on him on 3rd September 1939 that has begun to the World War which has continued till September 1945. So if we see the course of the World War II, it has begun with the German invasion of Poland in the 1939, and where within 15 days, Hitler's army was successful in running over all the parts of the Poland. They were moving freely, and Hitler and the two aggressors partitioned Poland between themselves. So in 1940, Hitler attacked again the Denmark, Norway, and the Sweden. In the same year, in the month of May, Germany has occupied Belgium and the Holland. So Mussolini has been inspired by Hitler's success. Here we can see by this time Germany and Soviet Russia has begun to be widened there. So with the year 1941 was very critical for the Allies here as well if we say. On the June 22, 1941, Hitler has signed no aggression pact with Russia, invaded the country without giving any reason here. Okay, so the US government also declares a war on Japan, and where the European war has been originated from the attack of Germany on the Poland in 1939 has transformed into the global war because of the entry of US in the 1941. Okay, so however, the beginning year of 1943, if we see, there were a prospects of Alice, and there were two victories of EI Almain and Stalingrad. Okay, and the Germany armies were pushed back here. So by the end of 1944, if we see, the Allied troops were brought down among most of the western frontiers, the territories of the Germany here. And although we see in this meanwhile gap, Hitler has committed suicide, and on May 7th, 1945, Germany has surrendered here. After their surrender, after the Germany and Italy, although this Germany and Italy has surrendered, the Second World War was not yet over. So there was a lot of repeated ultimatums issued by the Allies. Japan continued to fight even though they have surrendered here. So the two cities, we see the main movement here, whereas the America has dropped two small atom bombs in the Japan cities. One, what is that? Very famous Hiroshima and the Nagasaki on the April 6th and the 9th, 1945 respectively. So this was the first occasion in the history of mankind, if we observe, where those atom bombs were firstly used in the war here. So prior to the first war, we did not see any of the atom bomb landing on the land here. So where with the formal surrender of Japan on September 2, 1945, the Second World War has come up to end here. So the consequences, if we see, the consequences were the lot of destruction has happened with the life and property, because both the victorious and the defeated nations, they were sustained the loss of the war here. The Second World War has ended the supremacy of Europe over the Asia and Africa because it was under their colonialism. Okay, several countries, including India, Burma, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Libya, Algeria, etc., that were became independent. Okay, so this destruction has caused by the Second World War and the invention of the atomic weapons made the nations international arena, on the international platform. It has made them realize about the necessity of establishing what an international body towards achieving the world peace. From then to now, nobody has been uh, thrown a atom bomb in any, because that was a very uh, dangerous attack that has been ever happened in the history of uh, humankind. We can see the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that as a result of Second World War, the okay, power positions of the various nations in Europe, especially in the UK, France, Germany, Italy, has got a very great transformation, which means a changes has been happened. On the other hand, as we can see, uh, because of this, they were the two superpowers. The USA and the USSR has been emerged from this war only as a superpower. USA has become a superpower, USSR has become a superpower with the result of this Second World War only. And this has also accelerated the scientific progress in all the spheres of human life, we can see. And whereas the world was divided into two superpowers, one was USA and the USSR, where one USA has been dominated by the capitalist America and other is the socialist Russia here. So there was a power rivalry that was been happening between the two superpowers that has actually made way for the Cold War. After the Second World War, we need not to think that war has been ended up, but because of the formation of these two wars, uh, because of the result of the Second World War, the superpowers has been divided into two. Um, so with that two, as there was a rivalry between the two, that rivalry was going in the form of Cold War. You should remember that the rivalry between the two superpowers was going in the Cold War here after the Second World War. So this is what your Second World War is. Yeah. The First World War has commenced on 20th July 1914, which was the bloodiest and the costliest war. And the Second World War has been commenced on September 1939, which was a consequences of various different causes and events that has placed after the First World War here. And there was a humiliating terms of the treaties of Versailles we have seen, and the imperialistic policies that were adopted by the Germany, Italy, and the Japan. And there was establishment of dictatorial regimes as well. And if we see, um, yeah, with the with the surrender of Axis powers, the World War came to an end in the September 1945. However, you see, this war has produced a catastrophic and far-reaching what the consequences, the results in the international scene, and many of the economies of several countries of this Europe was ruined by the war. If we are going into the war, you cannot say there is no loss of economies. There is a lot of loss of economies in the war, because it will need a lot of arms, ammunition, food, supply, and everything to the in at the time, and the medical treatment, and it needs protection of the people. So all these things needs a lot of economy that has been ruined by the war. We can see here. So the supremacy of the Europe over Asia and Africa has been came up to an end here, and we see this war has gave up the scientific progress in all of the spheres of human life here. Okay, so this is the today's class. Thank you so much.